Welcome to the debate. Today, we are stepping back to March 5th, 2009.
Right, the O2 Arena announcement in London.
Exactly. You have this artist who hasn't mounted a major tour in over a decade. He steps up to the podium, facing, just intense global media scrutiny. Plus, there was all that well-documented financial instability.
Yeah, the pressure was immense.
And yet, within hours of announcing a live residency, he sells 750,000 tickets. I mean, it was billed as the greatest live music comeback in history.
But opening night never arrived.
It never arrived. So today we are examining the final days of Michael Jackson and the This Is It production. The central question we're exploring is this. Was this incredibly ambitious residency the ultimate artistic ascension of a visionary looking to save the world, push the boundaries of live performance one last time? Or was it a tragic case of systemic erasure, where a physically fragile human being was just crushed by corporate greed and impossible expectations?
It's a really profound tension to unpack, because we're forced to reconcile this immense, unparalleled ambition with the brutal biological and logistical realities of the machinery that was built around him.
Well, I hold the position that This Is It was an undeniable artistic ascension. I mean, when you look at the Dome project, this 3D technological marvel he was building, it proves that his creative genius was sharper than ever.
And I view the production through the lens of systemic erasure. The focus has to be on the devastating physical toll and the predatory industry machinery that honestly turned a comeback into a tragedy.
Let's establish his agency here, though, because this wasn't a standard legacy act throwing together like a greatest hits tour. He was building something entirely new.
He was definitely trying to.
Right. Moving from center staging in Burbank to the Forum and finally to the Staples Center, he was integrating physical theater with a massive 90 by 30-foot multi-panel LED screen. You don't undertake a project of that magnitude unless you are in absolute command of your artistic faculties.
Okay, building a 90-foot LED wall is an incredible feat of architecture, sure, but that architecture requires a perfectly calibrated human being at the center to anchor it. You're focusing on the stage scale, but ignoring the structural reality of the schedule AEG Live imposed on him.
Well, let's talk about that schedule.
We have to, because initially this was slated to be a 10-show residency. 10 shows that allows a 50-year-old artist the biological recovery windows you absolutely need after performing at an elite athletic level.
Before we get into the expansion of those dates, let's clarify the physiological shift. When you say promoters ballooned it from 10 to 50 shows to break industry records like Prince's 21 nights in London, what does that practically change week to week for him?
It means the physical recovery mechanisms just cease to exist. Adding 40 arena-level shows is not some minor scheduling tweak. It's the equivalent of asking an Olympic sprinter who trains specifically for the 100-meter dash to suddenly run a marathon at that exact sprint pace.
But he was deeply engaged in the conditioning for it.
He had a well-documented history of profound physical exhaustion. We're talking about a man carrying the accumulated wear and tear of the bad, dangerous, and history tours. Those cause severe dehydration, sleep deficits.
Which are common in global touring.
Yes, but at 50 years old, your muscle tissue recovery rate drops significantly. Your cardiovascular bounce back extends. When AEG expanded that schedule to 50 shows driven by unprecedented ticket demand and corporate greed, and frankly, Jackson's own reported financial vulnerability like the near foreclosure of Neverland Ranch, they eliminated his physiological safety net. The margin for biological error went to zero.
See, you look at the scale and see a trap constructed by corporate greed. I look at the scale and see a canvas dictated by his own philosophical ambitions. The massive scale was required for his concepts. Take the Light Man sequence.
The 3D opening?
Yes, that wasn't a promoter's gimmick to sell tickets. That was his directorial vision. He drew direct inspiration from Shakespeare's Hamlet, actually. He saw his own artistic journey and mortality reflected in this glowing orb held by a giant luminescent figure. He was a man looking to the future.
Conceptually brilliant, yes, I agree. But how were they actually executing it?
By pushing the entire live entertainment industry into a new era. I mean, they were casting his actual face using alginate.
Right.
That's a highly precise, dental-grade molding material. They used it to capture his unique pore texture, so visual effects supervisors could digitally recreate organic micro-displacements on that 90-foot screen. He was mapping the exact way human skin folds and reflects light. He wanted this towering digital avatar to retain deep human empathy. He was using bleeding-edge technology to communicate an ecological message to save the world one last time.
But the technological ambition you're describing actually reinforces the systemic erasure framework.
How so?
Because there is a deep, tragic paradox there. He was attempting to merge bleeding-edge digital perfection, flawless, pre-rendered micro-displacements that never age and never tire, with the brutal analog reality of a decaying physical body. Let's look at the unfinished nature of the physical props built to interact with those screens.
You mean the set pieces?
Right. For the reimagined thriller sequence, they built a giant mechanical Black Widow spider. It was programmed to scurry onto the stage, open its abdomen, and reveal him. And in the Earth Song vignette, they built an actual menacing physical bulldozer.
A bulldozer programmed to aggressively rush the stage and stop mere inches away from him. That creates intense theatrical tension. That is the hallmark of highly engaged stagecraft.
It is engaged stagecraft, but consider the logistics. You're interacting with a massive mechanical bulldozer on a dimly lit arena stage while trying to hit vocal and choreography marks. The tragedy here is that the Black Widow never crawled in a live show. The bulldozer never completed its run.
Because the show was interrupted.
But those massive props are not just technical marvels. They're haunting metaphors. The show itself was structurally and emotionally too big, too heavy, and too dangerous for any single human being to carry alone. When you combine a 50-show schedule with that setup, the bulldozer isn't just a prop. It represents the crushing weight of the corporate machine rushing at a very fragile performer.
I have to push back on that analogy. Framing it as a machine rushing at a fragile performer strips him of his fierce creative agency and his perfectionism. How can we reduce him to a helpless victim when the evidence shows a fiercely engaged director?
I'm not saying he lacked vision.
But you're implying he wasn't in control. Let's analyze the musicality. In an era where legacy acts increasingly rely on heavy backing tracks to mask aging vocals, he demanded vocal authenticity. He refused to compromise. He insisted on singing live.
Insisting on live vocals is a noble choice, but it is exactly what made the show physiologically perilous.
It proved his cognitive command. We know from the musical director Michael Bearden that he wasn't just pressing play on old studio tracks. He was adjusting pitch and tempos to accommodate the natural maturation of his voice. He was highly professional. He was dictating how live brass, strings, and percussion should interact with modern synthesis. He was practically living at the Staples Center, showing up at 4 a.m., beatboxing every complex drum fill for Bearden to learn. That is not the behavior of a crushed victim. That is a master architect.
I don't dispute his musical intellect. His ear for arrangement was legendary. But his insistence on live vocals, paired with flawless choreography, created a fatal mathematical equation.
Fatal? That's a strong word.
Let's break down why it was physically impossible to sustain. We're talking about heavily synthesized, rhythmically driving music from the New Jack Swing era, right?
Right. Tracks running at, 100 to 112 beats per minute?
Precisely, 112 beats per minute. Songs like Jam and Remember the Time rely heavily on swung 16th notes. Singing a swung 16th note at 112 BPM means performers' breathing windows, the actual physical time to inhale oxygen, are reduced to literal fractions of a second.
Wow. Okay, when you put it like that.
To project a live, resonant vocal into a 20,000-seat arena during those microscopic windows while simultaneously hitting heavily syncopated full-body dance marks, that requires the cardiovascular engine of an elite athlete in their 20s. When you pair that immense oxygen demand with his fluctuating weight and appetite under the stress of a 50-day marathon, the tragedy is that his own perfectionism became the very tool the corporate machine used to push him past the limits of human endurance.
But that argument relies on the assumption that the machine was built to break him, rather than built by him to elevate his legacy. He was actively making directorial choices. Look at the title track, This Is It.
The Paul Anka track?
Yes. He deliberately dug into his vault and repurposed the 1983 master tape he originally created with Paul Anka. He updated the orchestration and positioned it to serve as his final poignant message to his fans. That is profound narrative foresight. And look at the drill sequence. He was actively co-directing with Travis Payne, perfectly executing military precision choreography.
He was shaping the physical vocabulary, yes, but he was simultaneously trapped by the technological rigidity of it all. Take the cinematic vignette he was directing, the smooth criminal sequence where they inserted him into Fillmore footage with Humphrey Bogart.
Brilliant visual concept.
Brilliant, but an unforgiving framework. Or the MJ Air sequence with the massive 3D 707 jet. When you sync live performance to millions of dollars of pre-rendered 3D video, you can no longer improvise. You can't just take a breath or extend a musical vamp if you're feeling fatigued. You have to hit your exact mark at the precise millisecond, or the illusion shatters. That rigidity left absolutely no room to just be a human being having an off day.
The margin for error was slim, undeniably, but the people in the room didn't see a man failing. Travis Payne noted that even though he was lean, his dancing was still incredibly sharp. He was like an athlete in a rigorous training camp, fine-tuning muscle memory.
A training camp that left a staggering week of collateral damage among the very collaborators who helped build it. We have to address the profound trauma it inflicted on his team. The tension between that soaring artistic ambition and his undeniable physical vulnerability created severe emotional whiplash.
You're talking about Kenny Ortega.
Kenny Ortega openly admitted his first instinct was to completely walk away from the footage. He said a part of him was broken and destroyed. He only edited the documentary to protect Jackson's vision from corporate entities.
Which speaks to the intense loyalty he commanded. They recognized the historical magnitude of his agency.
But consider the band. Mo Pleasure, the keyboardist, described the absolute emotional dissonance of rehearsing for months only to end up playing those exact arrangements at his memorial service. Or Judith Hill, the vocalist chosen for the duet, her haunting memory of him holding her hand, blocking out stage movements, talking about the future. Elite dancers who thought this was the pinnacle of their careers found themselves grounded in shared grief because the biological reality at the center of the machine failed.
The human cost was a monumental loss. Absolutely. But if we only look backward through the lens of June 25th, we miss the sheer vitality of the creative process from April through June. Veteran vocalist Daryl Finnessy, who toured with him on Bad and Dangerous, watched him in 2009 and saw the exact same dynamic force at work.
I hear that. I do.
So as we synthesize this, I think we arrive at an intersection. The profound tension between the Ascension and the Erasure is the true story. A mind that wanted to give absolutely everything, caught inside a logistical machine mathematically programmed to take it all.
That intersection honors the complexity perfectly. The ambition of the Dome Project and the logistics of a 50-show schedule are fundamentally incompatible for a single human body. He was a victim of that incompatibility, cornered by financial pressures, hunted by predatory media, and pushed by a relentless industry that prioritized breaking records over biological sustainability.
But despite all of that, the financial pressure, the media, the crushing logistical weight, I think we reach a firm consensus on one vital point. In the face of that overwhelming machinery, he ultimately remained unbreakable.
Unbreakable. Yes, that is the precise word for his artistic spirit.
When you analyze the footage of his final rehearsal on June 24, just hours before his body gave out, he was standing on that stage at the Staples Center. He wasn't phoning it in. He was executing choreography with the razor-sharp precision of a soldier.
He was entirely present in the work. The physical frame may have been failing, but the artist inside was fully engaged. He died as an artist, standing in the absolute middle of a redemption act.
He wasn't defeated by the machine. He was interrupted by it. He is the ultimate unbreakable victim. The physical toll erased his future, but his relentless desire to innovate with 3D technology, to insist on live orchestration, to heal the world, it proved his creative spirit was vastly stronger than the corporate apparatus that tried to monetize it.
The profound tragedy is that the massive physical props, the bulldozer, the mechanical spider, never moved in front of an audience. But the art itself, the meticulous construction, was already fully realized on that rehearsal stage.
Right, we don't have to definitively declare whether those final days were purely an artistic ascension or entirely a systematic erasure. We have to hold both the brilliant ambition and the structural tragedy at the exact same time. The tragedy is that the lights at the O2 Arena never went up, but the triumph is that the cathedral he built inside the Staples Center, that unfinished masterpiece, will echo forever. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time.